happened, not the flood, but something that caused this civilization to be destroyed. Then, the Jesuit Catholic Church came in, took this knowledge, rewrote history, converted the system to their own system, and left out any ability for someone to gain this power through their own accord. They must reach God through the church. It wasn't like this in the Church of Ayesa. Okay, so now we move on to King James. So supposedly he had a vision or whatever and was destined to create this English translation. This is still the same Jesuit system, but converted into a more Shakespearean presentation. Now there are multiple things to address. The first is the extreme likelihood, if not fact, that Francis Bacon was the main editor of the King James Bible. Notice how I didn't say create the Bible. I got a lot of comments on the Christian Origin series saying, oh, the Bible's far older than King James or Francis Bacon. Obviously, I'm stating that not only was he the main editor for the Bible, but was also Shakespeare. Francis was also the writer of the New Atlantis, where he imagined a technocratic, scientifically run society. He was an occultist that hid secret Rosicrucian symbols within the Bible. The goal was to establish the church as a method for collecting all the esoterically inclined individuals, or those with connection to spirit, and put them in a mind trap in which they prayed to an unknown God and could only reach that metaphysical power through the church. They took the philosophy and virtues of ancient knowledge and integrated it into a powerful ritual, spiritual tyranny. Now let's slow down there. That doesn't mean there isn't truth in the Bible, and that also doesn't mean that Jesus or a Jesus-type figure didn't exist, okay? So let's bring up the Church of Ayesa again. Remember, this was the original church. These old Tartarian churches from around the world are from these people. They were not originally designed to be praying centers where demons would suck your spiritual energy, but they were originally designed as sacred geometrical healing centers that would charge the aether body of man. There's also this idea that they used these churches as spiritual transport systems in which they could rematerialize their bodies in different locations. I've talked about how the society didn't eat meat and or food at all, since all these cities do not have proper sewer systems in their founding. The reason is because this civilization was on a different wave of spiritual consciousness and technology. Over time, other nations formed independent of this church and began plotting its demise. We see this come out of Rome with the Jesuits after they take over the world through some unfortunate circumstances, whether it be cataclysm, or the sun disappearing, or even some type of plasma apocalypse. You have the early Tartarian Age and the fall of Tartaria. The fall of the Tartarian Age is within the last 600 to 300 years, where there were many changes that took place. In the 1700s, California was an island on many maps. There's no possible way that this could be just an error if the history they tell us is true. There's also countless problems for the founding of many cities that many channels have covered the inconsistencies and pointed out there's many things that don't really make sense. At some point, there was a steampunk-type age in Europe and America, where aether-free energy technology was being used. This is not necessarily the technology of Tartaria, but after these empty cities of Tartaria were being filled, they began finding ancient advanced technology from the Church of Ayesa. They found them in the churches, train stations, and are now called government buildings. These were re-engineered to develop many of the technologies that we use today. There were still leftover nations of Tartaria in this age, and it wasn't until 1812 that they had been fully conquered. Now, early Tartaria is within the last 1,000 years. This is at its prime. We hear about this in many of the myths around the world, where teachers came and taught the arts and sciences and fundamentals of civilization. They established their spiritual priesthood around the world. And look, I'm not really one of those zeitgeist guys, that brings up astrotheology and just says, Jesus never existed. I think he could have possibly been a druid. But this is ultimately the story of a spiritual helper who existed during this time of cataclysm to come and help others who were unaware of their spiritual power from within. Fomenko, which if you haven't heard of his work, suggests a completely different chronology than our modern timeline. He suggests the dates for the Old Testament are actually of a much more recent time, and it is the New Testament that is actually of a more ancient origin. Maybe it's possible that Francis Bacon and other Jesuit occultists of the New World decided to create the Bible in such a cryptic and spiritually influencing spell that would ban humans from using magic or pursuing spiritual enlightenment for themselves. Maybe they thought that this was the best way to protect humanity from another cataclysm. As I mentioned with Francis Bacon's book, The New Atlantis, they wanted to create a scientifically run society or tyranny that will be the New Atlantis. It won't fall and fail like the last one. Was that the goal? Well, how would they accomplish that? Well, they would just completely remove magic from the picture. Yeah, but we can't just take it away. It's not something physical. It's a natural right and process of reality. You have to relabel it and give another solution. The solution was, all you have to do is believe in Jesus, and you will be spiritually saved. Don't go through the work and training of mind that is required to go through such an ancient, sacred tradition of understanding and knowing God. All you need is this physical book and Jesus, and you will have everything you need. For many, that's true. And there's no intention to take that away from you. However, if we look at the tyranny of the church and the removal of knowledge of the past age of the church, we see a deliberate attempt to remove ancient knowledge from passing on into this next age. Ancient knowledge is the perception of the world. It's the cosmology of the past. They needed to remove this concept that God is actually within man. This is the foundation for how the original church had practiced their philosophy, and it was not seen as blasphemous at all. Many advanced intellectual minds were created from this ancient philosophy of spiritual planes, and faculties resulted from their practice. Modern examples of magic include Satanism, which has nothing to do with the ancient tradition. They just have radicalized a compressed and oversimplified version of magic for evil and sometimes simply for cultural influence. New Ageism is the wokeness in spirituality. Things like the secret law of attraction or these cringy occult stores that are trying to sell spirituality to you. They have made occult knowledge look like a joke in the modern day. Then you have these elite cabal Luciferians, if you want to call them that, or who are taking part in magic, so is magic evil? No. First off, if it wasn't for many of these individuals, I'm not sure we would know anything about the occult. Sure, I think many of these individuals partook in spreading propaganda to a degree, but let's just take Manly P. Hall, for example. Now, there are some weird things about his story for sure, and he was a high-ranking Freemason or whatever, but That by no means takes away the knowledge presented in his works. You can call him evil, you can say he's elite, but until you actually read his works, you'll find it's just not the case. Magic is not only the ability to make change in the real world through different practices and the implications that follow, such as the cosmology of mind over matter, but it's the foundation for spiritual practice and enlightenment. We shouldn't avoid it simply because we see different elite figures who want to use it for control. If anything, it might be the only way to escape tyranny is to reclaim our natural-born magical powers and consciousness. Magic is a tool. You use it on a daily basis. If you're a Christian, you do it unconsciously. Praying is a form of magic. You're wishing for something to happen through a ritual of asking God in some form of repetitive mantra. Any type of hope thinking or belief is a form of magic. Speaking in tongues, baptism, candle lighting, the Eucharist, bell ringings are just some examples of Christian magic. Magic also includes the realm of natural magic. Sprites, nature forces, fairies, as above, so below. These are natural foundations for the way our reality works. You can't just take that away and you can't just claim it's evil. So, why would you want to do magic? Well, if you're asking that, you must mean consciously, as it's a part of the way this realm works, and it's a natural process within our consciousness. Why would you want to do conscious magic? To develop faculties for more inner awareness, spiritual astral journeys during dreaming, intuition, guidance, knowledge, and or developing the self and influencing creativity. It is the influence of the genius. Hopefully soon we can change our perspective on magic to preserve it for generations to come. Assist in this process by liking,